when the sequence commenced, tried to start the right engine, flooded the engine, and it took us a while to get that one started. Race started, everyone left, we were behind.
It was a fairly fair start, except we saw Stampede flying out from behind. And it looked like they took a runner at the start. And we saw them pass us on our right-hand side. We throttled up and we passed a monster. Thought, well, something a little bit wrong with them. They couldn't get going. And we entered the circuit after a little bit of, I wouldn't say arguing, but we was kind of a little bit heated at that time, because I was telling James, we have to go that way, we have to go that way. And James was saying, no, you wasn't listening at the meeting, you're going so.
So we went down the road, one engine, trying to get the other engine started, and the boat is whining going down the road until we realized what was happening. Then I told Darren, up tab, up tab. Then we got the other engine started, and off we went.
So we took a 2-minute penalty when we shouldn't have. Huh?
We were kind of looking for the markers because the heat of the moment, we didn't really take a good example of where they were, a good look of where they were and stuff like that. So we were like fish out of water looking around for it. And then so happened that we were in front, so we had to make do with what we had, and left, right, and we got it right.
We never broke out once, but we held our 120 throughout. Backed off a little bit, but most corners we were going in, take corners around high 90s, 100. And that's why we were able to stay in front.
By that time, we were in third, behind Global and Stampede. And the boats in front of us changed course. And we're going to the marker that I was pointing at earlier on to Guy. So they got to that marker just before us. We went around that mark, and then we headed north towards into the circuit. When we got onto that circuit, we passed Global, and then we were running in Stampede's wake. After the first corner is when we first discovered one of the problems that plagued us for the entire race, which we lost oil pressure to the engines on the corner. Each corner, we realized that we had a serious issue with oil pressure.
I could tell you at that point, we were really cussing. I just saw the oil pressure drop from 60 pounds to 20 pounds, and I'm, what are we gonna do here now? So it was disappointing. We were really disappointed at that time, because we knew we had a boat capable of at least challenging the front runners. We got relegated to having to baby the engines and let our competitors go, like Stampede. And then later on we let Solo pass us. All the time I'm not even seeing, I can't even see the sea, because I am glued to the gauges.
In the Gulf, we're pretty much flat out at about 130. Despite doing 130, we still got a lot of trouble to catch Stampede, even though they're supposed to be in the 120 class. It took a while for us to catch them. Well, we caught them right there by about 5 islands, and then once we passed them, we were in front for the rest of the race. Well, normally it's dead calm, and that's very beneficial to the smaller but faster boats like Solo and Fire One, where they just get up and go one time, because they have a lot of power and they're a lot smaller than us, so they just go.
coming towards Canning's Point, we were leading all the slower boats that have a different course. And heading towards Canning's Point, the harbour master and a couple boats were parked in the middle of our course. So I looked at Brent and I was like, where to go? Because I didn't know if to try pass between them and Canning's Point or if to try pass on the other side of them. And it's a bit dangerous because any boats behind harbour master couldn't see us coming. So if we wrap around them at a speed and a boat's coming out there, it was a little bit scary coming into that. So we had to go around them, but it was not a pleasant.
Yeah, it's like a blind spot really, and you have moving boats, pirogues, everything.
All around.
So you're trying to gauge, you're at race speed, and you're trying to gauge how close can I actually pass to these vessels who are moving, and you have this big blind spot and you have to bend the corner. So all these things are going through your mind at that time.
Heading into the Boca, we were doing exactly 79.9 miles an hour. We were perfectly trimmed. We went all out. We fly the boat perfectly, deaccelerated when we had to, and we reaccelerated when we had to. And we came out, we were ahead of our 1 minute class now. All the way up to Maracas, we were having no detonation problem because we did not get enough time to change the fuel, the old fuel that we had. And we back it off a little bit to keep the engine nice and quiet and cool. We noticed we was also low on water pressure. We normally have 15 psi, we was getting 5. We don't know the reason, if it was a gauge problem or what it was, but we took it easy there and we kind of keep it going.
Well, coming out of the first Boca this year, compared to last year, it was a dream. The water was calm. We had 1 or 2 small swells, which suited our boat. And I think because it was calm, a lot of the spectators stayed out on the north rather than stay within the Boca. So for me, that was a blessing because there was not too much traffic there. I was able to see the corner a lot earlier than I normally do. I think at that point, we're probably doing about 75, 76. We haven't reached the 80 mark yet. We're trying to get there, but so we haven't fully maximized our speed, but we're working on it.
Going through the Boca was a bit easy. We didn't have much rollers this year. And then when we got onto the North Coast, we realized from there that, it's going to be a pretty flat race. You know, a few bumps here and there, which wasn't much. Our boat handled very, very well. Even with the bigger setup this year that we have, all the way up the coast was really, really nice. What I think the two of us was bugging us a lot was the fact that we were down on power.
heading up the north coast, leaving the Boca, we had no clue where our competitors were. Heatwave, who started with us with no penalties, we thought they were going to be right next to us for the whole start, but we never saw them. So we didn't know where they were, if they were having trouble, or if they were right behind us. And it turned out that they were actually right on our heels the whole time.
As the water conditions were favorable at the time, we were holding, I would say, on average about 75 miles an hour.
Yeah, we didn't know where everybody was, so we were out in front. We didn't know how hard to push. So we didn't know if to go faster, if we could save the equipment, go a little slower. So it was kind of not really too good of a position to be out in front for so long at the start.
Well, not having any intercoms throughout the season, we have always not had it. So we had to, always communicate in other ways, and we always understood each other. Usually guys, you hear stories about guys who actually have their intercoms in, and you hear about guys punching each other and cussing each other and those sort of things right throughout. And not every time somebody will agree on someone always thinks, no, I want it done this way or that way. So it's kind of good, I guess, that we have this understanding and with no intercom, because we just kind of like look at each other and we give hand directions. And like I said, it's normally a case of if the boat's going into a corner and I know I have to carry speed, he will just know how to deal with it. Past Maracas is when we started seeing a couple issues arise. We had a trim hose on one engine burst. So the engine couldn't trim, so it was tucked in right through. So it kept the bow down, so that made it uncomfortable and it can't get your speed up. Another issue we had was the same engine jack plate. It had some fatigue and it ended up moving up. So the engine height was wrong. So that made us have low water pressure. So we had to hold the boat back and just try to finish.
The water between the Boca and Maracas was considerably better than it was last year. It was almost comfortable. We could see Elixir in front, so we were trying to gauge our speed on Elixir. We didn't want to get too far alongside for them to see us and decide they wanted to try and have a head-to-head. We wanted to just stay right in the blind spot and just creep with them and find a way to get past.
The setup we had would not allow us to run at 80 miles an hour, but could make us run around 75. And on average, we were running around 65 to 70. And when it was a little bit flatter on that north coast, we did try and push it up to 70. We saw Elixir in front of us, and we just kept on following them in their wake.
But they kept slowing, so we kept increasing our lead. And then I glanced to the side and saw this boat way out in the distance. And I said, there's a boat out there. And he turned and looked, and he said, that looks like Energizer. And so now we're trying to push because we don't want Energizer to get past us. We hadn't seen them for the whole race. And unfortunately, it was Energizer. And they just kept creeping a little bit more and a little bit more.
At one time, we were doing about 110 miles. It's the first time we ever did that type of mileage on the North Coast. And all my years of the Great Race, it's the first time we ever had water that good. It was calm as a pond.
Yeah, that was a gift of a weather. But we couldn't get the bow untied.
We passed Fire One just after North Port, just around Sodo Island.
And we passed him like he was standing still, But then when he passed us later, we were standing still.
As soon as we passed Martlot, Darren said, we are losing an engine. And when we looked, we saw the stack just dying. When we opened the hatch and looked, we realized that the timing belt had stripped on us.
That's what you call racing gremlins. They get in there and they start gnawing at things. You can't even see them,
Well, Mr. Solar is there all the time. We are now stripping the engine to check and make sure all the internals are good. We have already ordered belts and so within the next month, we should be ready to roll again.
We're spraying a lot of gremlin deterrent in there.
We had two problems on the North Coast. One, we had a fuel problem. And when we checked the fuel filters, we had water in the filters. But it had gotten so bad that the water on the water reached filters on the engine also, so the engine was also cutting off. So when we initially drained the filters of the water, we tried to start back. We went for a little way, then we shut down again. And then we changed the filters, and that cured the problem. But while we would continue going, continue racing, we noticed that one of the engines was kind of shaking wildly at the back of the boat. So when we inspected, most of the equipment was there, but we couldn't understand why it was shaking. So we didn't take the chance that it may have gotten worse. So we returned to Trinidad.
This year our speed was really down because, I mean, we have a lot of old equipment. I just didn't want to do it this year. The equipment was, I mean, it has had it. So it's not going to be doing it again next year. So what we try to do, because as you know, for almost 35 years old, we've completed the Great Race. Last year we didn't. So this year we decided, even with the old equipment, we would complete the race. So my brother Richard, who's the throttleman and the mechanic and everything, and he decided to keep the boat, or the engines, to a minimum. So we just ran them at about 4,800 RPM all the way through. And even while doing that, we still ended up mashing up one. So even that didn't help us much.
Knowing that we had a 3-minute penalty, having to start behind everyone, we basically decided between ourselves that we would take our time going up the north coast, because in the grand scheme of things, 3 minutes is not really a whole lot over the length of a great race. So stuff happens to other boats along the way. So we're just going to try and keep our equipment together, go up the north and try to finish the race. I think we were more or less closer to 60 than 70 going up the road. Going into Maracas, we were actually just a little bit ahead of right formula. And because we were so far out, when we took that corner going in, they cut us on the inside. That's where they got the lead on us going into Maracas there. So we were actually ahead of them for most of the way, because I think they had, right formula had some problems coming up the road. So.
Well, we didn't plot our GPS coordinates in. We knew basically where we was heading. And we kind of lost sight of the marker on the coast. So it was like, all right, we just keep an eye out for markers, and eventually it's like, spot the marker and we went in. A little misjudgment, but it happens.
Water conditions going into Maracas were calm. We were hoping for a rough water, but we didn't get it. We got some lumps behind shore, but that was about it.
On the north, we were a little down on RPM on the port engine. We had a problem with our sensor coil firing 2 cylinders weak. So for the whole race from the start, we were down on RPM. Going up the north, we were maintaining our best. We were trying to do between 60 and 61.
Trying hard.
passing up around La Filato, we had a little issue with the shuttle linkage breaking, and that kept us back for about 10-15 minutes. Well, it was a major issue, but given our team and the confidence in each other, we got our problem sorted out and we headed out to about 10-15 minutes after.
We're normally on the spectator side of it, and first year that we'll actually be racing. So we were quite surprised how calm it was. We set up, we were running the boat thinking that it's going to be the worst, and it just wasn't, you know. Ross had the engines tucked in a little bit, and we were just waiting for the water, which never came. Just 2 days before the great race, we decided that we were going to change engines and go up in class, because we were running in the 60 mile an hour class, and we went into the 70 mile an hour class. So it was a very last minute thing. We had a lot of late nights. The night before the great race, we actually didn't sleep. Going up the North Coast, first of all, we lost our tabs. So we were out of the water quite a lot. So I guess due to that, one of the lines for the oil bottle broke and the oil came out into the bilge. So once that happened, the oil in the engine, when it starts to go low, the buzzer starts to go off, and that's it. That was the end of it for us.
Everything from the get-go was just perfect. The water in the Gulf was perfect for the boat that we were running in, and all the way up the coast, the boat just handled them beautiful. It's actually the best great race we've had, and although we did not finish, it was the best great race we've had thus far. And we've been racing since '95, and we've seen all sorts of conditions, but the boat we were in just loved the conditions this year.
Coming up to Blanchisseuse, the engine overheating buzzer came on. So we were like, oh man, when everything was going well for us. We probably stopped trying to figure out what the problem is for about between 5 to 10 minutes. I think 2 of the boats in our class ended up passing us at that time. And eventually we turned back on the ignition after putting on the engine cover, checking to see if everything was okay. Then the buzzer came off. And we started to get up on plane, and the water pressure came back up, and everything was normal from there.
It's the first time we actually raced together, the first time racing on in that boat also. And I would say it was perfect. I couldn't ask anything better. And the main thing for us this year was to actually complete the race, seeing that the boat was racing for the first time. And we also started with penalties, which made it even more difficult for us to even think about trying to win the class. So our goal was just really to finish the race. The speeds we were doing in North Coast were roughly like about 45 to 50 some places slower, some faster, depending. Basically, at the beginning, we ran probably like about 40, 45. We came up to one of our competitors, which was Outcast. And at that point, we decided, when we were running together with him, we decided we could give it a little more. So we decided to do that, and by doing that, we end up being in first place because we saw another competitor broke down. And after we passed that, we decided to hold back and take our time and don't take any chances.
Boat handled like a dream. The water was calm. The fountain's very easy boat to run. Because they're so high out the water, you try to keep the nose down. And once you keep your nose down, keep the boat level, it runs really well. We took our time. We went to the road around 70 miles an hour, and we just had a blast going up the road, and everything held together perfectly. Our time penalty was only a minute, And by the time the other boats took off, we had enough time to settle ourselves. I actually thought it was a benefit, actually, because there was a lot less boats around us. And we weren't going to push the boat too hard because of all the problems we had before. So starting by ourselves was really very beneficial for us. By Grand River, we caught and passed Whiteheat. At that point in time, we were running third in our class. And Rush, which is a 38 Boeing, they just broke down right in front of us. So we had the opportunity to pass them and get up into second place. So that was good.
Well, one of the reasons we stay with the Boeing 32, right, which is what we raced today, is because it handles the water, especially the rough water on the North Coast, really, really well, right? And we really don't want to change that for anything else right now. Even if we had a choice, we'd rather not change it because it's it's like a Cadillac, a Mercedes, or a finer tuned machine running up on the North Coast when everybody is bouncing around and knocking themselves out and stuff like that. We don't feel anything, so it's an absolutely wonderful boat.
As I should tell, we've had problems even before Grand River. The first time we tried to race Great Race, we had a problem out front Macquarie. The second time, we lost the engine right coming into Grand River and crossing the shallows. So for the second year now, coming through Grand River and heading across the shallows on the full power, there's a great feeling and an anxious feeling of just praying everything holds together and we actually can reach the Tobago on the full power. Along the whole North Coast, we average anywhere from 80 to 105 miles an hour. I think our average speed ended up being somewhere up in the high 90s. A lot of the time when we're racing, it's pretty much quiet in the back. I mean, me and Alfred just sit down there, we talk to each other. In regattas, basically, we count off the laps. But in Great Race, we're there constantly communicating with the front, with Daddy and Joey, while they're navigating through the race course themselves. We're actually telling them, okay, well, Chupara is 2 miles ahead, Grand River is 15 miles ahead, you have to come up a few degrees, come down a few degrees. Basically, we are also in contact with a lot of people on shore, letting us know what's going on. And we talk very easily amongst ourselves in the cockpit, though it does get a little tense sometimes, especially when we have a lot of boats alongside and we're jostling for position. But Usually it's a very good dynamic. Coming into Stampede, we expected to see at least fire one on the horizon, and as we were coming back around the point to head across lowlands, we did see fire one off in the distance, a little spray, but it was a great feeling to see that nobody was right there behind us and we could take our time and actually try and finish the race and keep the engines together. Lowlands, that whole area in front of Magdalena, coming into Scarborough is always, well, I would say one of the more choppier parts of the race course. You're getting a kind of BMC, and it really is rough right there on that reef, so you get banged around inside the boat a little bit. On the finishing circuit, I think we went around the first lap, well, the first few corners of the circuit almost at about 75, 80 miles an hour, and as we came around the last corner is when we pegged it and just said, right, if it breaks now, we'll still cross. Only that last leg was when we were actually going flat out. Crossing the line is an exhilarating feeling. Feeling it the second time, it wasn't that initial shock as knowing that we've prepared the boat and we've done everything we had to do, and we made sure everything was tip on top. And crossing the line just proved to me, in my feeling, that we did a good job and we actually made the race a successful race for a second year running. It's a great elation and a weight off your shoulders basically to know that you're there. So if you reach Tobago and you've reached Scarborough and you've finished the race, winning the race is a great feeling. Having to prepare so hard and take such a beating for just over an hour, it's a great feeling to actually cross that finish line and know that you're the champions, that you won and you've actually beat everybody behind you and you've had no problems. That is the greatest feeling right there.
One engine was down on power, and while crossing that BMC going into Tobago there, you know, the boat would always re-enter on the starboard side. I remember one time we going across and I was like, guy, fans on or what? He says, what happened? You're sweating? I said, boy, rail driving here, pony fans. You know, I was soaking wet.
I think when I looked at you, it was about to pass out.
You know, I mean, a bit more driving just because, you know, one engine was down on power, not really water that much. Really, if the boat was up on power there, we would be across in much faster time.
That was basically the race in there for us. By the time we got past Stampede, we opened enough of a gap on them that even though they got started again, they couldn't come back and catch us. Something I said before with the great race is you have to beat the race
as well as a competitor. If you don't finish this race, and if your boat doesn't hold together, you're never going to win the race. So you can race your competitors all you want, but you still have to get to the end. We really wanted this year to have the boat working and being able to use all the power that we know we had there. And it was disappointing that we couldn't do that. And when we got to Tobago and opened the engine hatches, we thought, how we made this, we don't know. It was a blower belt that had shredded, and it was just a total mess in that starboard engine. I don't even know how that engine running with no boost and the other engine running with all the boost. I don't know how we didn't figure that out.
It was nuts. I mean, the first breakdown we averaged was about 6 minutes. 6 minutes in a race at those speeds is a lifetime. We must have, all in all, probably lost 9-10 minutes in breakdowns. But, you know, we had to finish that race, no matter what. We weren't about to give up.
From the first time we broke down, Lee said there's no mishaps on the computers. So
no alarms.
we know it had to be a fuse or something of the sort like that. And from the first time we got to the fuse, after we knew exactly what to go at every time.
The finish circuit was choppy, but I wouldn't say it was terrible. We were just running conservatively there because at that point, we just needed to finish that race, you know, and we were nursing, again, that same fuse. The fuse, every time we'd run hard and we land too hard, it'll blow because it was close to the exhaust, so we were just running conservatively, but I can't say it was bad.
Yeah, Scarborough, the waves were coming from everywhere, and it was pretty choppy and pretty rough, and we had some swells to deal with, and it was rough coming into Scarborough. That's why we slowed right down coming into Scarborough. We had an issue with the boat as well. We hit the first marker coming into Scarborough. We were going straight for the second marker. We saw this boat, and it was on the left-hand side, and it was coming across, slowly coming across. You want to know what was going on. We were approaching our boat, which turned out to be a Coast Guard boat, and we were seeing it direct in our front. But of course, we are going up and down, and so we don't see it all the time, because you get vision, then you don't get vision. Because we're in a canopy boat, so we can't look over and see what's going on. You know, you have to wait for the bow to come down to see. So at times we didn't see the boat, so it was very hairy. We had to slow right down and make evasive action. We had to go left. We came first in our class, 4th overall. It was great, really good. I mean, beating Solo, beating Paramount, two of the big guns. I mean, they broke down, but you know, the object is to get there. You got to reach before you can win.
crossing between Trinidad and Tobago was a little choppy, but that actual crossing between Stampede and Scarborough, nightmare. You had no idea where the waves were coming from. You had big swells from in front. When you're up in the air, somehow the sea changed, the waves were coming from the side. It was not a nice time. And I think at that point in time, we lost our hatch. Before we did so much work on the boat, our last hatch cover weighed about 6 million tons. It was huge. And they cut it down, and they actually put on that hatch cover about 2:30 that morning. So it was fresh on the boat. We never ran the boat with it before. But I know going over, Anthony kept looking back, and every so often he would say, boy, the hatch cover bouncing. The hatch cover bouncing. And then eventually by Scarborough, he says, okay, well, that's it. The hatch is gone. Now, our concern was that the hatch cover fall over and damage the drives or damage the props and so on. But fortunately for us, when it went clean. And we're also very happy that it didn't damage any other boats, so nobody got hurt by the hatch being in the water. We were lucky some fishermen picked it up and recovered it for us. We now moved up into this class. We won the Stampede last year. We only had one race this year in the 80 mile. Like I said before, we haven't really hit our peak on the 80 mile. So we were going into the race thinking that, yeah, you know what, if the sea condition suits us, we could do it. But we figured they had boats like Alexia, Heatwave. Alexia is a lot faster than us in flat water. Heatwave could really run quite good with some chop. So we thought maybe, let's see how it goes this year. Once we got out on the north and we saw the kind of water it was, we just put the hammer down and kept going the whole way over. So it was exhilarating. It was really a thrill to come in, second race in the 80 mile in our class and to win. I think we did quite well.
The worst part of that crossing is from Stampede to Scarborough, and Scarborough itself is the worst of it all because it's a little confined space where all the swell converges and there's a lot of shallow spots, so it gets very sharp and very choppy. So it's very unpredictable. You're not sure how to really gauge a swell. So I think some of the hardest landings and the most uncomfortable landings we took were actually in just that little circuit inside of Scarborough. We were sort of celebrating almost inside of our helmets because we could see in the distance. We couldn't see Alexa behind us, so we knew that we had some measure of a lead on them. And we could see boats on the circuit, and you know you're about to finish. And then we came through the start gate and we were making the first turn to make the circuit. And I turned a little sharp and we came through a pretty big swell at that point, and the boat jumped completely sideways. And he was, not now, come on, like, because we're on the finishing lap, you know. And we landed nicely, and he talked me out of trying to be a little too aggressive. We were on the last lap and just let's get it done.
We thought in the shallows that was going to be the worst of it. Last time we raced was 2010, so we didn't experience that stretch from Stampede to Scarborough, and the water there was bad. And with no trim, it was even worse. So the ride for us there was much worse than, I would say, any other boat coming in. So we just took our time. We knew we couldn't beat anybody else ahead of us. We just took our time coming in. We knew the boats behind us weren't our competitors. It was Bacchanal and another one. And we just took our time and just wanted to finish the race.
Where we finished, even though it was third, it was not too far behind. We were actually only 2 minutes behind Heatwave, and he was another about 4 or 5 minutes behind Energizer. So finishing the race in about an hour and a half is still not a bad time for the class, and some of the conditions being a little rougher in the other half. So we're still happy with the result. We know we had problems, so we know what we could rectify to minimize them next time.
With, getting into the finish line and realizing that, once again you've lost your equipment and you can't finish your race as you would have liked to. Even with all your equipment working, it's a nice feeling. It doesn't matter where you finish in your race. Finishing the race is greater. It's always great to finish. But, if you would be able to finish one day with all your equipment working, I say, yes, that was a great race. It's a passion that, like I said, for 35, you still ask yourself why you do it. Even when you're outside there and all the stress and the pressures before your race, you get into and you're continuously trying to get things done and fighting this and fighting that, even right up to the last minute. You have to say, why am I going through this? But then you wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, great races are fantastic feeling.
The name of the boat is Right Formula. Right? That alone you need to do. It has the right formula to handle the water.
Between Crown Point and Scarborough, well, that was the roughest part of the race for us. And given the fact that we were down on RPM on the port engine, we had some challenges setting up the boat properly in that condition. But we got it sorted out and we were on our way.
One thing we notice about the boat is once it doesn't have full power, she tends to be a little cranky. In rough conditions, she's very cranky. I'll say she's like a lady. If she don't get what she wants, she doesn't behave nice at all. She's a little cranky in rough water when she don't have full power. And we, as you say, from the start, we were down on power and nothing we could have done about it. So we decided just to maintain what we can and do the best we can and just hope the water pick up.
Coming to Scarborough, we sort of took it light because we had some serious issues of breaking a lot of parts coming right out of Crown Point into that Scarborough area because we were heading into head-on waves, and those waves were coming in big time. So we was really throttling the boat at the right speed, coming in just about 70 miles an hour, 65, right there, coming in, until we realized we out of that direct wave, and where we could turn into the lowlands area there, and there where we started to pressure the boat back up a little bit into top speed. Next year gonna be a big, grueling challenge for the Hero team, I have to say, in all of us as one, because we are looking to produce a much larger boat to compete into the higher.
Yeah, while the driver was dodging the waves and the swells, and every so often I would turn around to look for the competitors to see where they're chasing us. And as we entered the shallows, we had Outcast right behind us. And as we put some distance between Outcast and us, to the far left, we saw Pum Pum Conqueror was coming up on us. So we had competitors around us all the time. They keep us going, pushing to reach.
We were about 3rd place in our class. We were the last boat to finish, I believe, but we were 3rd place in our class. The other boats didn't make it to Tobago. So that's quite good for us because we were one of the underdogs going in as we were now racing together. We struggled the whole season trying to piece together the boat. So it was quite good for us to make it as opposed to the rest.
should be down here probably by November, so we'll be out for the first race. It is a boat known as the Cat Killer worldwide. It's one of its kind. It's a 47-foot fountain running two 1550s. So right now we were building the motors right now by Sterling. It's pretty much the same power Monster has, same motors. And we're going to do all the gearing and propping up there, so we hope to get that boat to rocket to 130. So if they thought it was hard this year to be that deep, it's going to be even harder.